What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Homebrew Subaru. In this episode I want to install all the steering components on the S13. I've got everything to do it, so it's time to get done. I've got a new steering rack, I've got new outer tie rods. The steering rack of course will have the inner tie rods on it. I've got new energy suspension steering rack bushings. And I've cleaned up the brackets and hardware, painted them, and I also have the high pressure conversion line for installing an RB power steering system into S13 chassis. Now it doesn't actually block off the second port on that power steering pump that's on the RB for the Hikis. And I really haven't figured out that part of it yet. I know I can use a factory KA pump because I've seen where you can kind of grind out the bracket, the pump will mount right on, and basically you can use a KA pump on the RB. But I'm still not sure if I'm doing that quite yet. And then the return line coming off the power steering pump, the power steering rack, I'm going to be reusing part of the old line. And then I'm just going to put some new hose on it, clean up the reservoir, and get it installed as well. I don't have that stuff cleaned up and ready to go yet, but I figured I would just get this stuff installed because I want to start getting some parts onto the car. There's probably a bunch of small things next week that I want to kind of get together, and those power steering parts will be part of that. There's a bracket that I have for this fuse panel here that I've kind of got kind of bent up the way that I want it and painted it all, so that should be for that. The heater hoses, I'm probably going to change the heater hoses even though they're not in really bad shape, but I don't know how they're going to configure up to the RB yet, so I kind of need to get the engine in the car before I can decide how long they're going to be and if they're going to have any elbows in them, because I know it's pretty tight when it sits in there. But enough talking about that. I'm going to get the boxes open and start installing some parts, and then probably just show you vaguely how I'm installing it, and it's not going to be a very long video today, but at least it'll be progress on the car. So I've opened up the box for the power steering rack and the rack and pinion. It was really well packaged. A lot of insulated paper all on the top of it. It looks in really good shape, obviously. Lots of warning tags everywhere. It did come with cotter pins and new seals for the line. Get back to taking this out, installing the outer tie rods, the bushings, and putting it in the car. So now I've got the steering rack all set up. Everything's completely on it. And if you get to the point where you're not sure if the steering rack's centered up, and you should install it centered up, because if you don't want to take off your steering wheel and adjust it, especially on newer cars, because you just can't, and there's no master spline on the actual steering input, the way to figure out how to center up your steering so that you get the maximum available adjustment out of your tie rods. So what you want to do is very gently clamp on some vice grips. You don't want these slipping. The spline is rather small, and slipping it could damage it quite easily. But you just want to slowly turn we'll go this way. Slowly turn the gear all the way to one end, and once you get to the end, we want to count how many rotations it is to this point going back the other way to the other stop. So that's 1, 2, 3, just about 3 1/4. So we'll call it 3 1/4. So we want to divide 3 1/4 in half, which is going to be about, just over 1.5 turns. So if we go about 1.5 turns, and a little bit more, we'll call this the half turn, and a little bit more would almost be straight down. We're going to go 1.5 and just a little bit more, and that steering rack is completely centered up and ready to install. It won't be perfect going back in, but it's going to be good enough that going to do the alignment, or at least me trying to set it up so that I can drive it to go get an alignment, it's not going to be all over the place and screech tires too badly. So now that I'm at this point, I'm actually ready to install the steering rack. Okay, so I've got all the parts installed. Had a couple small problems, nothing serious, but just unexpected kind of things. The bushing on that side, the bracket didn't really want to sink down into it very well, so I pretty much had to tighten the one side almost completely tight just to be able to get the bracket to sink down far enough before I could get the other bolt in. That bushing went in nice and easy. The steering shaft didn't want to go down onto the steering input gear or onto the spline. I mean, it went down onto the spline okay, and it was getting far enough to put through the pinch bolt, but the seal or the gasket that they had on top there, it's definitely aftermarket. It's like this thick, and I realized there's no way it can be on there for the steering shaft to actually install onto the gear. So it had to be cut off, and then the thing just dropped on pretty much, and I tightened it up. And then I got the high pressure line all tightened up down at the power at the rack, so that pretty much it should go something like this over to the pump. But so I mean, if I need to crack it loose and make a small adjustment, I might even put a little piece of rubber hose on it over here just in case it does rub. I don't think it's going to. Everything's going to be solid mounted, so the steering rack is pretty much solid mounted as it is, and the engine and transmission will be completely solid mounted. So gonna see how that goes. So yeah, like the next video should be trying to clean up a couple more small things. Maybe even try and get the lower harness installed, because we're getting really ready to put this thing back together and kind of drop it in there. I've got a couple small other things to go over on the engine. I need to install the valve cover gasket, and I have new spark plugs to put in it, and just kind of give it a once over. It needs the custom mounts installed onto it, and then we're getting closer to being able to drop it in. So other stuff's still coming. I'm still waiting on a few things. Like, I do have adjustable tension rods from McGann coming, but they're not here yet. The intercooler did arrive this week, and I already have the radiator and the hoses, so the engine goes in, all that stuff can be put in. I'm pretty sure the front bumper's going to have to come off to make sure the intercooler's sitting in there nice and the bracketing's all good. But yeah, it's slowly coming together. I do think about it a lot now, so I'm pretty sure that the front bumper's going to have to come off, because to sit the intercooler in there and make sure it's all sitting properly, I do have to change out these light bezels, and I do have new lamps coming as well. These daytime running lights are going to be like converted to like fog lights, so I need to still kind of get bulbs for those and wire them in. Lots of little stuff like that to do, so lots more videos coming. So if you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up, and if you are new here and you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button for me, hit that notification bell for future notifications, and I will see you in the next one.